What is up, everybody? This is your boy Charles. I don't talk like that, guys. What if I did sound like that? Wouldn't that be crazy? Anyway, y'all, we're checking out Gangsters of Harlem. I forgot what part. I think this is part 4 or 5, whatever. Anyway, this is a really good book. Y'all can check it out. It's on Audible. Let's play an excerpt from it, man. And then we'll come back with my commentary. That thumbs up button.
For Diaz to do the wash, exchanging $10,000 in $500 and $100 denominations, provided and marked by the DEA for an equivalent amount of small bills collected by Barnes's street dealers. In March 1977, another incriminating drug deal was made. This time, Fisher sold a half a kilo to Diaz and Geronimo at the Harlem River Motors garage at a price of $35,000. Meanwhile, Bruce had difficulty making a buy, but finally arranged an exchange of 44 kilos of manite and $2,000 for 1/4 kilo of heroin. Geronimo and Bruce were important in the investigation, said Robert Mazer, a former assistant attorney in the Southern District of New York who was involved with the Barnes investigation. Not only did they introduce DEA undercover agents to members of Barnes's organization, but they also wore tape recorders and recorded some conversations that were useful to the prosecution. The DEA also recruited 2 other informants, Robert Wooden, who helped to gather evidence against 2 of Barnes's lieutenants, and Inez Smart, who agreed to cooperate and testify at trial. The DEA also obtained a court order to install a bug in the Harlem River Motor garage. In late February 1977, Diaz and Geronimo went to the garage to make another drug buy, and the DEA listening post outside the garage picked up incriminating words spoken by a Barnes lieutenant. Gotta pick up a kilo out of Nicky's car now. The thick layer of dealers, buyers, distributors, and enforcers Barnes had in place between him and what was happening day to day in his organization worked well during the DEA investigation. Diaz conceded, "I never get a chance to meet Barnes," he added. "We were always passing each other in the shadows, and he definitely knew of me." But the authorities believed they had gathered enough evidence to build a solid case against Mr. Untouchable. It was time to bring the investigation to court. On March 16, 1977, the federal government took what it believed was its best shot at the drug lord, indicting him and 17 others for allegedly participating in a heroin trafficking conspiracy. According to the indictment, the conspiracy involved the sale of an average of 44 pounds of heroin each month, beginning in November 1976, using Harlem River Motor Garage at 112 West 145th Street. Barnes pled not guilty, and federal judge Milton Pollock set bail at $300,000.
A lot of money back
While
in
Barnes was free, his lawyer, David Breitbart, gave an interview to the New York Times Magazine in which he said the police had framed Barnes in order to justify their budgets. The article also portrayed Barnes as Mr. Untouchable, a clever operator who enjoyed his popularity in Harlem, engaged in a lavish lifestyle, and seemed to have made a career out of avoiding arrest and embarrassing law enforcement. On the front page of the cover story was the article's title, Mr. Untouchable, with the subtitle, "The police say that Nicky Barnes may be Harlem's biggest drug dealer. Now the government will try to prove it." Uncle Sam reacted like a bull with a red flag waved in its face. The day after the article appeared, Fisk, who was now the lead prosecutor on the Barnes case, received a call from Griffin Bell, the Attorney General in the Jimmy Carter administration. Bell told me the president had read the New York Times Magazine article about Barnes with interest and couldn't believe that a criminal like him had been on the loose for such a long time, Fisk recalled. The president said he considered the Barnes case the most important one in the country, and he wanted the government to put all of its resources toward getting the arrogant drug dealer off the streets. The government's case against Barnes, however, was problematic from the day the trial began in October 1977. While the prosecution had hundreds of reels of tapes from court-approved wiretaps, only one had Barnes's voice on it. And what he said did not have anything to do with drugs. On the stand, an undercover agent admitted he could not be sure it was Barnes talking. The government had another tape on which a man said, "I have to pick up a kilo out of Nicky's car." The tape, however, was blurred, and a defense expert witness said the word keys referred to keys for one of Barnes's cars as opposed to kilos. The quality of the prosecution's witnesses, including informants Geronimo and Bruce, did not help either. "We had two witnesses who were involved with the Barnes organization," Fisk recalled. "Obviously, that was the only way they got to know what they knew. But at the same time, they were in danger of being impeached on the grounds that they were unreliable, unsavory, and unbelievable. It was easy to conclude that they must be trying to get a better deal for themselves by getting Barnes convicted."
Of course.
Lou Diaz was as winning in court as he was undercover, and according to Fisk, one of the best witnesses he ever put on the stand. But the trial was turning into another familiar scene from the life of Mr. Untouchable. The prosecution had to deal with a judicial surprise as well. Judge Henry F. Worker decided to make the jury anonymous. "We weren't consulted and really didn't know what that meant," Fisk revealed. "There had never been an anonymous jury before. The judge explained that when the jurors came into the court, they would be given a number and identified only by the county in which they resided. The public wouldn't get to know their neighborhood, street address, or anything else for that matter. The judge said he was doing this for two reasons: to protect the jurors' privacy and to protect them from being tampered with." A gasp rose in the courtroom when the jury of 5 blacks and 7 whites announced its verdict. Barnes and all the other defendants were guilty as charged.
Wow.
2 months later, Judge Worker sentenced Barnes to life in prison without parole.
Jesus.
Later, accusations would be made that a juror in the Barnes trial had been paid a $25,000 bribe to obtain a hung jury on behalf of Guy Fisher, one of the defendants, while someone had paid another juror to put poison in Judge Worker's courtroom water jug. The former Mr. Untouchable would have languished in jail and paid his long debt to society, except that Barnes received some disturbing information during his first couple of years in jail. His former associates had forgotten who still ran the gang and were moving to take over his drug empire. The council was also not paying his legal expenses as it said it would. Most disturbing to Barnes were the reports that some of his associates were having sex with his wife, Thelma, and his girlfriend, Beverly Ash, and even providing drugs to his 2 young daughters. He hired a private detective who brought him the evidence verifying
So they was hitting his wife and his girlfriend.
that what the former Godfather had been hearing was true.
Wow.
The detective even brought back photos showing his women getting laid by other men. The gangsters, whom he thought of as brothers, were screwing him out of his money and property. As the reports streamed into the prison, the former drug lord had lots of time to do some thinking and assess his life as a gangster. I had made an attempt to kind of reevaluate myself, and I decided that my life was shallow, Barnes later told a courtroom, acknowledging that the millions he had made from the drug trade did not justify the harm he had done to the community. Barnes contacted the authorities and said he wanted to work out a deal. He would even be willing to implicate himself in some murders, if it had to be done to put away some of his former associates. One of the associates Barnes fingered was Frank James, whom he revealed ordered his brother-in-law pickaxed to death. James, Barnes added, kept a 4-man hit team on call, one of whom had murdered a passerby as an audition for the job. Barnes later revealed that he had ordered the murders of 6 individuals while he headed the council. Prosecutors agreed that Barnes had isolated himself from the day-to-day action on the streets, but he could still be valuable in nailing drug traffickers and helping with some unsolved murders. Not every prosecutor agreed with the decision. I was initially opposed to it, Fisk said. Barnes had a lifetime sentence without parole, and here he had a chance of getting paroled after 3 years in jail. I thought it wasn't right, and I spoke out about the deal. Barnes turned out to be one of the most important and productive government witnesses in U.S. history. For 15 months, he talked to his former associates, wife, and girlfriend as the feds listened in on wiretaps. He then went undercover behind prison walls, exposing himself to great harm while gathering information as an informant. When Barnes's tour of duty for the feds ended, his information was enough to put many of his associates behind bars and to convict more than 50 gangsters of additional crimes. Barnes supplied information about a terrorist involved in robberies and prison escapes, and a former inmate who had been arrested with documents revealing that he planned to murder public officials, including Ronald Reagan. Barnes testified before congressional hearings and presidential commissions about how the narcotics industry worked and what the government could do about it.
Anyway, man, this is some dope stuff, man. What do y'all think about this? This is Gangsters in Harlem. Is they talking about the famous gangster from the 70s, heroin dealer named Nicky Barnes, um, who was a big figure back in the 70s. I think him and I think Puff Daddy ran with Nicky Barnes back in the 70s. You know, Puff Daddy, the music producer, his dad was a street guy. And I believe when Puffy was like a little kid, his daddy used to run with Nicky Barnes, you know. Unfortunately, Puff Daddy's dad ended up passing away. He ended up getting killed. Anyway, this is a good book, man. What do y'all think so far? Leave your comments and subscribe to Charles and Appreciate it.